So you've got this fantastic conflict, this wonderful setting, the Spanish Civil War, but you've also got a setting of Paris in the 1970s. You've got a flamenco dancer and a ballerina dancer. How do these two women connect? What's the story?
Well, the story opens in Paris 1975, just after the death of Franco in Spain. And we have Paloma, who is 18 years old and is a ballerina who wants to be in the Paris Opera Ballet. And one morning she receives a visit from a mysterious stranger, and she knows that she's been given a quest, although she doesn't quite know what it is. But as the story unravels, going between Paris in the 1970s and Spain in the 1930s, she begins to see a connection between her beloved grandmother and this stranger, who she eventually learns is a famous flamenco dancer, La Russa. And as the story of her grandmother in Spain starts to unravel and the lives of La Russa and Paloma and the grandmother become more intertwined, she realises that there were good reasons for people to hate La Russa, and her grandmother was one of these people. So the mystery goes on from there.
Because you've got so many voices to juggle.
Yes.
In so many different places and times.
Yes, I mean, it was certainly, I set myself the artistic challenge of having the story told from different perspectives, because what fascinates me is how different people interpret the same event, and just a little piece of information left out can change a whole story. And of course somebody will leave a little bit of information out if it's to their benefit. And certainly with the story, although I knew where the characters were going to end up, with this story the beginning went quite quickly, but as I got towards the end I realised I had a lot of ends that needed to come. An ending that's just tacked on is not satisfying, and I knew that this was such a big story, I had to give it the best ending possible.
It's quite unusual to choose the Spanish Civil War as a setting, because it's not a period that many Australians know very much about. Was that its appeal?
It was, definitely, to me. I think when I start a book, I want to know about that period, and so from day one I'm learning. And the Spanish Civil War was, it kept coming up as a cause of the Second World War. It was leading into it, and many of my books had been set around the Second World War, so I was really interested in the Spanish Civil War. But also it was a war where country people, the countrymen of Spain were fighting each other, so that had a fascination.
How did you go about doing your research? Because there is a lot. It's a very rich, dense kind of historical sweep of a book. So how did you do it? Did you go to Spain?
Well, I have been to Spain, and I fell in love with it. And always had an attraction for Spanish music and Spanish dance. Of course, there's a lot about the flamenco dance in there. And when I hear that music, it stirs something in me, even though I don't have Spanish blood.
And have you been a dancer?
I ballroom dance. That's actually how I met my husband.
Yes, that's right, I remember that. Weren't you learning to tango?
Yes, when I was researching Wild Lavender, I wanted to learn the tango and met him that way, and discovered you can't dance the tango and not fall in love.
Uh-oh.
But definitely, and for this book, it's inspired me to take up flamenco lessons as well, because it just, for me, ballroom dance is so elegant. But flamenco is so earthly, it's so connected to something very deep
Much
in
rawer.
ourselves. Yes. What's so different about flamenco, it's so of the spirit and so of the moment. If you did a flamenco dance that was rehearsed, everyone who loves flamenco would say, what's that? It's like, artificial food. It just has no flavour. And with flamenco, it's really of the spirit. And for me, that fascinated me, that they actually talk about your demon in flamenco coming forth, and that's what inspires you to dance.
You write so well and so evocatively about turmoil and conflict and upheaval and people who have been wrenched from the worlds that are familiar to them and have to start again. Is that something that you've got as part of the DNA of your family history?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And in fact, it was writing White Gardenia, my first book, that helped me understand my mother and her life so much better. You know, when I was growing up, she had this fabulous photo album of these gorgeous women with smoky eyes and, you know, dressed in their fabulous clothes and jewels, but they had all been killed in revolutions, in front of firing squads and various tragedies. It was so different to everything I knew in my sunny Australian upbringing. And I always wanted to travel and to see the world, and I would say, Mum, you know, come with me. But she loved her home. Her home was, you know, everything to her. And it was only when I got older and wrote White Gardenia, I understood she'd been wrenched from one country to another. Her whole family, their history was, you know, having to leave Russia, then having to leave China, and, you know, very, very insecure world. And so when she had a home, that was the most wonderful place to be.
I think one of the other things that characterises your work is the uncovering of family secrets. That's a very important theme. Is that something that you experienced, that, you know, maybe your mother didn't reveal all her stories to you and kept some things back because they were too painful?
Oh, absolutely. They were painful to her, but also to protect me from very painful things. You know, she would talk about her aunt. She had a beautiful aunt who was very musical, but she never mentioned that she died in a gulag because she went back to, you know, to the Soviet Union, whereas my mother and her mother came to Australia. So definitely there was an idea of not, you know, affecting me, not upsetting me, and it was really only when I was older that these, you know, stories started to come through. Exactly the same as with my character in Golden Earrings, that she's very much protected from her family history. It's not so much secrets to be devious, but secrets kept to avoid, you know, facing a terrible reality.
You're very good on details in this book about what people eat and what they wear.
I do actually look at the recipe books of that period, so that I'm actually, you know, the recipes, I can say, are authentic for that time, and that was certainly the case with Tuscan Rose. Being married to an Italian, I loved researching how they were eating in the 20s and 30s. And also the clothes, but also I read the interior design magazines and also the newspapers of the period to see what people were, you know, concerned with. It was interesting when I was researching Wild Lavender that just before the Second World War there was a yo-yo craze, and all these little bizarre details that just, you know, are so fascinating.